Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today's video was previously featured on the Altenew YouTube channel, but I thought I would share it here as well. Today I have 3 card projects that feature the Raised Sentiments 3D embossing folder as well as the inked Poppies press plate. And I'm going to use this Raised Sentiments 3D embossing folder to add a lot of texture to my cards and kind of accentuate the main sentiments that I'm using on the cards today. Now you can see this embossing folder is a lot of fun and a great way to add texture to your card projects. I'm also featuring the inked Poppies press plate. Now, press plates are designed to work with either your Betterpress system or your hot foil system, but today I'm going to show you how to add some shine to them without foil. So let's get started. Now, for all of these card projects, I am using some watercolor cardstock because it works well with Betterpress. It gives you a lot of texture, and also the 3D embossing folders perform really well with watercolor cardstock. So I'm lining up this cardstock in my Raised Sentiments 3D embossing folder, and I'm using the sandwich that is recommended by Spellbinders for the Platinum 6 because that's the die cut machine I'm using. And you can see I have a lot of dimension on this watercolor cardstock. Now for this first card project, I really wanted to emboss first because I wanted to accentuate a few of the greetings. And to do that, I'm going to use the watercolor 36 pan set from Altenew. It has these gorgeous Altenew colors, and I'm just getting my colors ready on my palette by kind of warming them up with a little bit of water and swirling them on my palette. I'm going to use a few colors here. I did mix in a little bit of orange with this pink to make it a little more corally, and I'm also going to mix up kind of a turquoisey teal blue here. So I'm using a few of the turquoise blue kind of aqua colors and mixing those together. Then I'm going to take my brush and my watercolor paint here and just go across a few of these sentiments that I really want to kind of accentuate on the card front. Now, this is an easy way to draw attention to a few of your favorite sentiments on this Raised 3D embossing folder. You could also mask off an area and ink blend over the sentiments that you like as well. But I figured that starting off with the embossing was the easiest way to get the color where I wanted it on this background. Now for my second card project, I'm going to be creating kind of a loose watercolor background, kind of a blob. So I'm starting out with a little bit of clean water on my watercolor cardstock, and I'm going to use the same colors that I used before, a little more of that orange and not any of that teal color, but I'm using the same 2 kind of pinks or purpley pinks that I did before and bringing in a little bit of orange. And you can see after I added the clean water onto my watercolor cardstock, I'm just dropping in the color and kind of moving it around with my brush. Now keep in mind that watercolor as it dries will kind of lessen in intensity, and keeping that in mind, I decided I wanted to go a little bit stronger with the color. So I'm dipping right into that pan and adding a little bit more color into each of these areas, the orange, the pink, and the more violety pink here. And that way when it dries back, I know I have plenty of bold color on my cardstock. Now, if you want a softer wash of color, you would add more water to your paint and kind of mix it up on your palette as I started out with. If you want more intense color, then you're going to go straight into the pan and bring it over to your cardstock. Now for my third card project, I have a piece of cardstock that's a little bit larger than I started with before because I knew I wanted to mask off an area and trim this down in the end. So I used the Altenew satin masking tape to kind of mask off a rectangle in the center of my card project. And then I'm going in with the various colors of blue and kind of swiping it back and forth with a large flat brush. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I am not a watercolor expert, but adding color to cardstock, I can do that. And keeping a couple basic rules in mind, like using less water when I want more bold color or using more water when I want a nice soft wash, I can kind of fake it until I make it. And so I'm just doing some simple backgrounds today. And keep in mind, you can do this with any of the Altenew watercolors. So if you have the tube watercolors instead, these techniques will work as well. Now you can see that all of these backgrounds kind of look a little like a hot mess as I'm working on them, but I'm continuing to just have patience with the process. I'm using a little more water to kind of smooth out these colors, and then I'm hitting this with my heat tool to dry it. Now, it's best with watercolor if you can just let it dry on its own, but who's got time for that? So if you need to speed the process along, you can hit it with your heat tool. Now, here's where the magic really happens. I love doing masking, whether it's with ink blending or watercolor, and then peeling to reveal those nice clean edges. Now you will see in the corner where I had a little watercolor sneak under my masking paper. That's okay. I'm just going to take a craft knife and kind of scrape away at that area. You can also use a sand eraser or something like that, but I'm just gently going over the area to kind of soften that color. Now I'm kind of skipping around with the different projects here, but before I go on to the next step, I really wanted to reveal more of the letters on these sentiments that I kind of accentuated with the watercolor. So I'm taking a sanding block. This is actually for my nails, and I'm just going lightly over the surface of those painted areas to kind of pull up a little bit of the watercolor that I've placed on top of it and reveal a little bit of the white from the watercolor cardstock that's beneath it. So this is a very fine sanding block. Like I mentioned, it's actually a buffing block for my nails. It's funny how my products from my bathroom often make it into my craft room as well. So I'm just gently going over the top of that fine sanding block, and that reveals a little more of the white of those sentiments and helps them pop off a little more. So now that I have my 3 backgrounds ready, I'm going to go ahead and finish doing the embossing folder on the other 2 backgrounds. Now, I didn't need to do this first necessarily, and you could wait to do this process until after the Betterpress step, but I did it this way, and so I'm just going to show it to you this way. You can see I've run that through using the Raised Sentiments 3D embossing folder, and I have all of those really cool sentiments in the background. This embossing folder is great just to add texture, or you can use it for your actual sentiments as well. So it would be fun to emboss this and cut the different sentiments into strips and use them on cards individually. For today, I am going to go ahead and press over these embossed panels with the inked Poppies press plate. And I've placed it onto the chase of my Betterpress platform, that magnetic surface area or the base of it. And now I'm adding my watercolor cardstock to the platen, which is that clear plastic plate that goes over the top. Now I set it over my press plate so I can make sure that I'm adhering it into the pressed area. And now I'm inking up my press plate using the Antique Gold Pigment ink from Altenew. And this is a beautiful way to add shine to your press plates without pulling out your foil system. So you can see I've inked up that press plate, and now I've placed the platen onto the magnetic feet of the chase, run that through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine, and you can see I have that beautiful pressed image in that gorgeous shiny gold color on my watercolor cardstock. Now I will say that this does press down some of those raised sentiments that we created with the embossing folder, but I'll show you how to remedy that in just a moment. If you wanted to press these first and then emboss them with the embossing folder, you could definitely do that. Now on this card where I accentuated those few sentiments, that wouldn't really work because I wouldn't be able to get my watercolor stripes in the right place without the 3D embossing folder first. But for the other 2 cards, you could definitely press plate first and then do the 3D embossing folder to avoid this step. And for this step, what I'm doing is I'm actually taking those panels that are embossed with that Raised Sentiments 3D embossing folder, and I'm lining them back up by kind of nestling them into the raised areas of the embossing folder. So almost like when you nestle a die into a previously die cut image, you can kind of feel when these raised areas kind of lock into the already embossed watercolor panel. Now, before I closed my embossing folder, I did place a piece of tissue paper over the top because that gold pigment ink is an oil-based ink and it's not quite dry yet, and I didn't want it transferring to my embossing folder. So I repeated that process with the other 2 backgrounds that I created just to kind of re-raise those sentiments that I had pressed down with my Betterpress plate. And now I'm adding sentiments that I created with the Timeless Sentiments die set right onto these panels, and I'm placing them onto an A2 top folding ivory card base using some foam adhesive. Now, I like a lot of dimension, so my sentiments have dimension and the card panels have dimension, but you could skip any of the foam adhesive that you wanted to make these a little more mail friendly. I tend to hand my cards in person more often than mail them, so I don't mind the little extra dimension. So there you have it, a few cards featuring the Raised Sentiments 3D embossing folder as well as the inked Poppies press plate, and a way to add a little bit of shine to your press plate images without pulling out your foil system. Now, each of these cards have their own kind of unique look, although they all tie back together because they are using the same products. But I would love to hear in the comments below, which of these 3 cards is your favorite? I think for me, it's that Hugs card there on the left side. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. Or you can head on over to the coordinating blog post that will be linked in the YouTube description as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. I want to say thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you enjoyed these projects. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of the fabulous paper crafting and card making video tutorials shared. Don't forget to leave me a comment below and let me know which of these 3 cards is your favorite. Thanks again for stopping by. I'm so glad you're here. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. To subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.